Good afternoon. Welcome to a very special edition of FYI here at KBBG radio station. We're very pleased to have in the studio with us today Senator Dotzler, who has spent 16 to 17 years in the Iowa legislative body and has a very rich and rewarding background, which certainly lends itself to conversation around the economic problems or program of President Obama, as well as the auto industry in particular. And I think we'll open with Senator Dotzler making comments regarding his perceptions of the auto industry. And I will question at will, if you don't mind, and I think we'll open the lines towards the end of the presentation. If it's okay with you, we can open the phone lines at 234-1441. And so I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you, Sharon. It's always a pleasure to be on KBBG Radio, and we want to thank the radio station for being active and getting the information to the public in a nonpartisan way, really. And you've always been great on that, of having legislators here to talk about important issues, and that's really why I'm here today. You might be aware that in my period of time in the Iowa legislature, I've always served on the economic development committees. In fact, right now I'm chair of the Economic Development Appropriations subcommittee that funds our Department of Economic Development and Workforce Development. And I've really been involved with labor issues. And it really stems from my experiences in the workplace. When I got out of the service during the Vietnam War, I went to work at John Deere and worked on my degree at UNI. And so I spent 31 years in manufacturing and have a really kind of a broad background in understanding economic development and the importance of manufacturing to Iowa and to our community here in Waterloo with the United Auto Workers, which is a branch of the UAW, stands for United Auto Workers, Agricultural Implement and Aerospace Workers. So it's kind of a broad-based group, but we're here, and I'm here today, kind of to give a counterpoint to what the Romney campaign has been saying, okay. and really we want to get the truth out. Okay. And we feel that they're really misleading the citizens of our country and our state about what they stand for and what they do.
Well, I'm sure that all of our listeners would certainly benefit from that. I think the latest piece that was publicized regarding the auto industry, I think, was advertisement done in Ohio, maybe in Toledo, where there was talk, or they suggested that President Obama was going to send the auto plant back to China and actually mounting a fear campaign. There's been a lot of confusion around Romney's position regarding the auto industry. There's been a lot of steps forward and then, of course, a lot of backtracking, which seems to be somewhat of a pattern. I'm not sure about patterns, but that seems to be a pattern. So when you say you want to really inform the community, which aspects of their particular platform would you like to tackle, first, second, or third?
Well, I'd really like to talk about their what I call false claims, and I know the auto industry has said it was inaccurate, but it really boils down to lying about what's going on. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they claimed is that the stimulus dollars, first of all, shouldn't have been given to the auto industry, and we know that those stimulus dollars really saved, tens of hundreds of thousands of jobs across the country, and literally almost over 10,000 jobs right here in Iowa. In fact, they talk about there's over 72,000 jobs in Iowa alone that are directly tied to the auto industry. And even though we don't have direct manufacturing assembly, but we do have independent parts suppliers here in Iowa. And one of them is Champion Spark Plugs down in the, I believe it's in the Burlington area, Quad Cities area down there. And they have over 400 jobs tied directly to the auto industry. And because of the stimulus that President Obama approved and got through Congress, they were able to save those jobs and actually are talking about hiring more people, over 100 new jobs,
Now, was
directly with the stimulus
Was
part.
that okay, that was the overall stimulus,
The overall
not the money directly to the auto.
Well, it went to the auto industry, and because the auto industry didn't have to go through bankruptcy, they didn't shut down these plants and close them down, and we kept the jobs.
Okay.
And so they saved jobs, and that's the first part of their claim, and they've been claiming that this stimulus didn't work, but
right.
It really did, and it helped Iowa in a lot of different ways, you know, where it came to money for education and educating workers, and we can go on about that. But what I really want to talk about is their claims now that they took those stimulus dollars, GM, and they picked up their Jeep manufacturing operations and plan on moving all those over to China. And the fact checkers who are out there looked into those claims, and they also talked to the auto industry, and Chrysler Corporation was kind of the parent of Jeep. You know, they said flat out, that isn't true. Yes, we do have manufacturing over there, but we are adding those dollars, those stimulus dollars, are helping us build our base back up here in the United States. And not only are we going to keep the Jeep operations here, we're going to add jobs and we're going to grow it, and our future is really bright here in the United States. And the Chrysler's chief executive and flat out said, and I got a quote from him, he said this: Jeep assembly lines will remain in operation in the United States and will continue to be the backbone of our brand, and it is inaccurate to suggest anything different. So what we have is the Romney campaign are out there, and they're saying that they're going to move it forward. And when they got questioned on this, and they said, the fact checkers and even the auto industry said, you know, candidate Romney, you know, and your vice presidential candidate, you're not telling the truth about this. You need to stop it. And what did they do in response? They actually bought more airtime for the same ads.
Right, they doubled
You know,
down.
so, and, you know, their campaign has gone out there and said, well, we're not going to let, you know, fact checkers and basically the truth dictate our campaign for us.
It's interesting that you say that they're not going to let fact checkers dictate. I think it was the editor of Time magazine the other day that was saying that Romney is a data-driven manager and that he makes changes based on facts. And I thought I was going to fall out of my seat when he said that, because it's been the one campaign that hasn't had an appreciation for facts at all. And in fact, if I may say that, it appears to be a campaign that has no hesitancy to tell lies, falsehoods, whoppers, whatever you want to call them, at will. And I'm wondering, how is it that, help us understand how politicians can just get up and tell those kind of lies? You know, what's going on here in our country right
Well,
now?
I think that if the truth hurts your campaign, they're willing to say anything to convince people that it's something different. And I think it's really ironic that the Romney-Ryan ticket is out there trying to claim that they're for jobs in America, yet when their party, President Bush, right now is in the Cayman Islands trying to sell offshore manufacturing and hiding your resources so that they don't have to pay taxes in the Cayman Islands. You know, I was wishing that the press would be into this presentation, but they locked that down, and we'll never get to hear what President Bush is talking about. But we know that Governor Romney invested in the Cayman Islands. He's got money overseas. He tries to use all these shelters. And then, you know, when they talk about regulations on the federal level, you know, and trying to make things easier for business, I think that we ought to actually reward companies that stay here instead of rewarding tax breaks to companies that take the jobs overseas.
You're right. Bush is in the Cayman Islands. They did at least announce that he was there. And the query was, why would he decide to go there at a time, you know, that's right before the election? I guess my question is, people should wonder why the Republican Party has chosen not to include a former sitting president in any capacity whatsoever when you have, for instance, Bill Clinton out stomping for President Obama, but you have no former president. That seems to say something to me that, number one, he would go to the Caymans. Number two, the party has chosen not to include a former sitting president at all. And then the party continues to mount these lies. Let me back up a little bit, though, because I think it's important. You mentioned that the stimulus money provided 72,000 jobs approximately here in Iowa for those manufacturers that had some sort of subsidiary kind of relationship with the auto industry. I don't think I've heard those numbers before mentioned. I don't think I've heard anything mentioned about the linkage between Champion and our small businesses with the auto industry, which I think is important information.
Yeah, and those numbers are really related to the auto industry, and it can include the repair part of it, sales, all that was all tied in. And I worked directly in the legislature with the automobile sales industry here in Iowa, and they were deeply concerned about what was going on, and they welcomed that stimulus package that they put together, and the package that they had, Money for Junkers program, that really kind of helped drive manufacturing and kept it alive while at the same time protecting jobs and keeping these independent part suppliers across the country going. So, when the Romney and Ryan are out there suggesting that it was a failure, I saw it firsthand as a legislature, in the Iowa legislature. If we didn't have the stimulus dollars for education, we would have had to cut training dollars to our community colleges, to our Regents universities. K through 12 would have to have been cut because we didn't have the resources when those dollars came through. And the other part about it that people forget, and you're seeing it on the airways right now, is we did our own stimulus package, and it was called iJobs, and some of the legislators are being attacked about that, but they seem to forget in 2008 we had one of the, I think it was ranked at that time, the 5th or 7th largest natural disaster in the history of the United States. Not just Iowa, but the United States with those 2008 floods. Then we had tornadoes like the one that went through Parkersburg, New Hartford, north of here, and those dollars all helped with that disaster relief and helped communities get back on their feet. Those stimulus dollars help save jobs, help put people to work, and that's what we are here for, and what I'm here for is to really say that when they tell us that President Obama hasn't looked out for workers, that is a fabrication of beyond all fabrications.
Right. So, and I hope our listeners are picking up on this, Senator Dotzler, because we frequently see in the various newspapers in the states letters to the editor regarding how the stimulus hasn't worked. People have picked up on the rhetoric and on the lies and believe that it hasn't worked. When in fact, since 2010, Iowa has created over 20,000 new jobs to put into the market, along with those jobs that were created that were linked to the auto industry. And this is the probably the longest or the largest growth, I think, since the 1990s, when there was a grave kind of manufacturing disparities going on throughout this Midwest. We in Iowa need to know that Obama is as interested in job creation as Romney says he will create, that actually Obama has the track record of creating these jobs across the country. And I think that's one thing that's coming out very clearly for our listeners today. Should that money disappear, or had that money not come, our unemployment rate would have been even higher.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm on the board of directors of Iowa Workforce Development on the state board, and we get those reports all the time. And you know, without those dollars, we would have continued to have a high erosion of workers and jobs available for them. So it made a big difference. One of the things that has worked for Iowa that helped create jobs is President Obama's efforts in the wind energy field and alternative energies. And here we have an individual who is campaigning for President of the United States who's saying that they're going to get rid of the wind energy tax credits. And we have actually thousands of jobs in Iowa, and we're really leading the nation on manufacturing of parts for wind turbines. And because of the efforts of Governor Vilsack and the work that was done when he was governor and the continuation with President Obama, you know, this industry looked really strong. But now you've got a presidential candidate saying that they want to eliminate those tax credits. And in fact, because of just what he said, and because of what Congress was saying on the Republican side, they have had a layoff of workers across this state. So when he says he's out there to help the workers, his very words are causing Iowans to lose their job right now, right today, because of what this candidate for president has been saying. And that's tragic, it really is.
Romney is saying that he wants to look out for the middle class, right? Well, I think Iowans should know that if he is elected and looks out for the middle class will be unemployed, and the middle class will probably be waiting for those jobs to be created. President Obama then has created jobs under the stimulus package for Iowans. He has also supported wind energy and committed to promoting manufacturing of alternative types of energy here. Romney has been opposed to that. Obama has also been supportive of the major manufacturer of cars, etc. He has not threatened to take jobs back to China. He has not been one to support outsourcing of any kind. He supports bringing jobs back in. I think former President Clinton said the other day that if the United States stays with Obama, that the job increase would be around 12 million down the road, just as Romney is saying he can come in and create 12 million, but he would be creating, if he did anything, on the back of what Obama has already done. And so part of your message appears to be, let's look at what Obama has done versus the lies that Romney and Ryan campaign are putting out there regarding his achievements. It's almost as if the old let me create a stereotype for you kind of thing. Let me project onto someone else the failures that perhaps the previous president did put in place, so much so that they won't even invite him to speak for Romney and Ryan at this time. So you put China on the table, you put the jobs on the table here, the manufacturing jobs are related to the auto industry, you put wind industry on the table, letting us know that the wind industry will also create additional jobs in addition to the 7,000 jobs that have been created in Iowa. And you've also informed us that Romney opposes the wind production tax credit, and which would probably limit those jobs or wipe out those jobs. So all of those things that have gotten Iowa into the position of having a surplus in their budget by having workers would pretty much go by the wayside. Am I interpreting that somewhat?
You've hit it right on the head. I don't even need to be here. You got this down. And it's right. You're 100% correct. And you know, if you look at what somebody has done, so we got a clear record of what President Obama has done. He's consistently stood up for the auto industry when some of his own advisors were saying, you know, maybe we ought to let these companies fail and reorganize. But President Obama said, no, I'm going to stand up for the American worker. They're the backbone of this country, and I'm going to stand with them. And he has done that. And he stood for the creation of alternative energy jobs in this country. And we've seen gain. Well, now with the Republican Congress and Mr. Ryan out there and Mitt Romney telling people they're going to end this credit, we're seeing an erosion of the good work that's being done.
Right.
And if they don't have these wind tax credits, Iowa's going to benefit in ways people don't realize. Because right now, Iowa is one of the top manufacturers of wind energy in the United States. We're not the windiest state, although if you go down the State House, some people might say, around the Capitol,
a lot of hot air blowing,
a lot of wind down there. But really, if you look at the Dakotas in North and South Dakota, they have more wind energy available than we have here in Iowa. But the problem is that the reason they haven't developed these wind alternative, wind and energy facilities is that they don't have the energy transmission lines. They don't use that energy there, and it's expensive, and you lose a lot of energy moving it. So what President Obama wants to do is they want to make sure that they have the infrastructure and invest in this infrastructure, and you're going to see a huge growth in wind energy out west, and we are set here in Iowa to build those wind plants. We got our foot in the door. And so if they don't move forward and continue with these energy tax credits for wind manufacturing and the manufacturing and the placement of these wind generators and turbines, Iowa's going to lose out on thousands of jobs.
We would lose thousands of jobs.
And they're good paying jobs.
Yeah, as opposed to those jobs that work with vegetables like at McDonald's.
There you go.
Tomatoes.
Let
me ask you this though. You said this tax credit, this wind production tax credit, that we have the infrastructure in place to move on this and to get ahead of the situation. It sounds to me like you certainly support this tax credit, and it sounds like probably other Republicans also support this tax credit. So this is something that is bipartisan in the good interest of Iowa residents, because without it, if Romney is elected and opposes this, we would lose automatically approximately 35,000 jobs nationwide, and then within the state, we would also lose those jobs that have already been created. That sounds like a lose-lose situation to me. 7,000 in the state, 35,000 across that's lose-lose. I mean, that's not a good situation.
And this is coming, this is what a presidential candidate is trying to convince people across this country, that he's for the American workers. But if you look at his policies and you look at what he's saying, it couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, when he worked at Bain Capital, they really had a policy of looking at companies that were profitable but maybe marginal, and they went in there and bought these companies. Then they laid the workers off, cut their wages, cut their benefits, and then told the states that if you don't give us additional tax credits and property tax credits, we're going to pack up and move.
Right.
And so what they then did is they leveraged additional tax credits. The company was actually making more money because the workers now lost their health care. They lost some of their pensions.
Benefits,
and they got paying lower wages. Of course, they're going to be a little more profitable. And then what did Mitt Romney do? And this was a quote from him. He said, then we harvested those companies and we sold them for a huge profit.
Yeah.
They harvested them. You know what they harvest? They harvest the middle class families' lives. They harvest your future for your children. They harvest the health and well-being of your families. And I think that's despicable, and I am so outraged on it. That's why I'm here today, is that, you can go and lie to the American people long enough, but eventually the truth's going to come out.
I appreciate your outrage, and I have certainly said some things on my show, but it's absolutely incredible that I can tell you on the one hand that I am for the American middle class and the American worker, and on the other hand, if I'm not telling you the details of my plan, I can woo you on the one hand with the carrot, and I can beat you over your head with the stick once I get in office, because my policies are not in sync with my rhetoric. And that's what's happening with this campaign, according to what I'm hearing you say.
You know, and they are doing an old carny trick. You know, it's like, okay, you got the shells there and there's a pea under it, and they want you to watch that pea, and that pea is really social issues that doesn't really make a difference in people's lives. They're talking about gay marriage. They're talking about issues of through the churches and trying to scare people. And the truth of the matter is that they ought to be really scared about their futures and their lives and their families' lives if these guys get in control. And you know, the issues that we're talking about, the wind energy tax credits, they've been bipartisan. They worked here. You know, I know that Senator Grassley worked with then Governor Tom Vilsack, because we did our own tax credit here in the state, and they worked off of the wind energy tax credits and helped on the federal level of getting those things put together. And it was really, you know, Tom Vilsack that got Mid-American Energy to put a 5% portfolio together on this wind energy to create these jobs. So it's Democrats and Republicans working together, but Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan are tied to the big oil companies, and they see that as an attack on their profit base. They're willing to get rid of the production tax credits for wind energy, but keep all the tax incentives there for the oil industry. And we're being taken advantage of that. We're being taken advantage at the pump, and we're paying it for through our personal taxes.
Now, you certainly have painted a picture that is very, very, I think, disparaging, you know, in terms of the political system in our country, when we can listen to lies, not force politicians to verify what they're saying, and to basically be willing to walk forward and follow someone blindly. When you compare this to, or use the metaphor of the old shell trick with the carnies, how many carnies still exist in the United States? Probably not very many. The carnivals, you know, that's because what they were selling didn't work. And what's being sold by the Romney campaign, according to what I hear you saying, is just a bunch of sleight of hand and a misdirected, you know, in terms of misdirected eye and detailed scrutiny on the part of the public. I would like you to let the listeners know anything else that's on your plate before we start to try and put all of these pieces together. I'm having such a good time. I don't think they would want me down in Des Moines, because I would just probably enjoy myself too much having conversations with people like you.
You would fit in because you do your research, and that's what is difficult for hardworking American families, is they're working so hard. They don't really have the time to get in and spend and to educate themselves. And that's why programs like this are so important. And it's not only on the federal level, we're seeing it on the state house level. And we have local candidates that are working hard and believe in these concepts. Deborah Berry is up for election. She has an opponent. Nessa Katasevich, a Bosnian brilliant young woman that is also in this.
26-year-old,
I
believe.
Yes, she is, and a hard worker. Then over over in Cedar Falls, we got Senator Jeff Danielson and Bob Kresick, Representative Kresick, and a newcomer, Bob Greenwood, who's running. And it's going to be a great team when we get those elected. And they support all these policies. They work directly with these alternative energy areas, and in healthcare with Bob Greenwood. I know they're saying out there that Bob Greenwood has missed a lot of city council meetings, but he was in Washington, D.C. working on the healthcare issues because he was president of the Pharmacy Association of the United States. And he was there looking out for middle-class families.
There seems to be something wrong here with communication and information. We need more information. They say information is power, basically, and it certainly empowers our listeners when this is done. There was one thing I didn't hear you say about the China bit, and you talked about Bain and their investment cycles, you know. But I had heard something, I think, in the news where it was indicated that Romney had invested, or either his wife had invested over $1 million in this one particular company, buying it at 37 cents a share. It's somehow associated with this company that was the Jeep deal that was going to move over. And now the shares are worth $37.20, and how they've made so much money by saying, let's bankrupt the auto industry, let's invest in those cheap shares, and then let's wait, and then let's be... Anyhow, I'm sorry, I'm off track. My students know that every now and then I do this.
Yeah, but it's all true,
but, you know,
though, so
because,
it's a good point.
because I'm listening to you with industry, with the busting of the unions, with the tendency to want to dismantle manufacturing, outsource jobs. We're really setting up, if he is elected, another cycle of the same sort of repression, depression that we experienced a few years ago.
Well, I think one of the important points that I want to make, and I know we're kind of running out of time, but you know, Ryan is up at UNI today, the Romney-Ryan campaign, and
That's
Ryan's
why I'm
up
here
there
at KBBG.
speaking to students, trying to, you know, misdirect them again. And the truth of the matter is that their budget, the Romney-Ryan budget, would end up cutting resources, and they talk about cutting Pell Grants and support to students. And when you do that, and you cut the health care programs, when you do that, especially on the education side, the number one thing that businesses have stated that they need isn't tax breaks. It's skilled and qualified workers. And we have a shortage of educated workers. We don't have a shortage of talent, but we have a shortage of skill sets that they need to get. And with their pricing, the average family, the middle class families, their children right out of that education that they need to get. And I came from a poor family. I worked my way through school, and it was the GI Bill that got me the resources I need to get through school, and it helped me. And you know, I worked hard my whole life and paid all my taxes, and that's what you get when you educate a workforce. You invest in that workforce, you get return on your investment by bringing jobs to our state, to our country, and keeping them here because you have the skilled and talented workforce you need.
And I think that our listeners should recognize that that's one of the things that Obama has been advancing throughout, that we need to make sure that our young people are educated, that it's affordable for them. I would say this, if Ryan is speaking up there and any of my students are in the audience, he's going to have a hard time, because my students are very well versed on the importance of education, what Obama's administration has done, and I shouldn't have done this. I did it. You know, I talked to them about the Pell Grants and all of those things. But one of the things I found is that there are many young people who are totally confused with what, and they voted already, of course, but they're confused with what message is it that the Ryan Romney campaign is trying to give to me, when reality is telling me something else. Have these people escaped from the bubble all of a sudden, and they're trying to sell me a bit of goods? So I would hope that those critically thinking students up there will listen closely, because you're absolutely right. The other thing it does, if you dismantle the education program, you set in motion a series of events where you have haves and have-nots. You have an inner circle that has, and then you have all of these other workers who are probably going to be useless unless you retrain them and pay them what you want because of you. Anyhow, I will stop at that, you know, but there are connections there that I think people need to see. But they need to know that you can't believe the hype, that there are facts out there that support Obama's work and what he has been doing, and that discredit the lies that the Romney-Ryan campaign has been using all of that corporate money to put on air to support. And so, Senator Dotzler, I'm going to have to come down to Des Moines to spend more time with you. Is there anything else you want to say before we close
No,
out
I just
here?
want to make sure that everybody, if they haven't already voted, to get out there and vote. Be ready for tricks and games at the polling places, because they're doing it all over the country. They want to repress the vote. We know for a fact that here in Iowa, the Republicans have been training their campaign workers to tell them that they needed to have a CNID.
Yeah.
And they have actually caught the film that they've been using. Now they scrubbed it off of their websites and stuff, but workers have been misinformed in Iowa that we have an ID law. And if you get to the polls and somebody starts messing with you and telling you you need to have an ID, that isn't true, and you need to contact the Democratic headquarters in the Obama campaign, and we're going to get that straightened out, because if they can't win it fair and square, they'll try stealing it like they did with Al Gore's race.
I think they're also using your mailing list of Democratic voters, because they've been calling a lot of the Democratic voters here in Iowa. And in fact, I've received calls too from the RNC with people not wanting to tell me. I say, what's RNC stand for? Oh, don't worry about that. It's just, this is a political call. Republican National Committee phoning my house when I'm a registered. Okay, folks, that's me, Sharon Clayton, Dr. Clayton, signing off here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for your time, Sharon.
Yeah.